Ever wondered what it truly takes to succeed in specific jobs around Signature? Well, you're about to find out. From software engineering to talent acquisition, we're here to spotlight real-life paths to success. Welcome to On the Job With, your window into career pathing and discovering what it takes to excel in roles all around our organization. Your host and Signature Edge producer Addison is diving deep into the heart of career exploration and hearing personal experiences from people's journeys to career excellence. You can only know what's possible when you hear what the job really is directly from those getting it done. So, if you're ready to focus on career pathing and discover the steps that led our guests to where they are now, buckle up and tune in to On the Job With.
Hello, Signature Edge listeners. This is producer Addison. I'm here today to start a brand new series interviewing associates from around the company to know what it's like to be on the job with. You might have heard that from the intro music played before we started talking. We really wanted to get this podcast going to talk to people throughout Signature that have had interesting career paths leading to where they are today. And we thought the perfect person to kick off today's episode would be our operations support manager, Cody Swanson. Cody, how are you doing today?
Doing well. How about yourself?
I'm excited to begin this new podcast and kick it off with you. So, Cody, as I mentioned, part of this podcast is we want to get down to the heart of career pathing, telling people, showing people how they can become more at Signature, how people get into certain roles and what they do. You've had quite the interesting career path before Signature and even leading to your job inside Signature. But currently in your career, we'll just start off, you're operations support manager. How would you explain your position to somebody not familiar with Signature, whether they're brand new to the company or maybe not familiar with their organization in general?
So I probably explain it first by explain what Signature Performance is and what we do. The name isn't always obvious to most people, but we are in the business of improving healthcare within this country is our primary focus right now. And so we do a lot of different revenue cycle things and make sure that we can help support providers and patients to make sure everything's running smoothly and ultimately lower the cost of healthcare. And so I fit in a pretty cool role nowadays where I get to help implement and design solutions, specifically right now for our customer contact center. So anything to do with people calling in for customer service, among a couple other different things, I get to be the one to help improve those systems and also, run analyses and try to make everyone's life here a little easier so that they can do their job better. That's kind of my main goal.
I think somebody who has the job of making everybody's life easier is probably a pretty well-liked person. So taking that description you just gave me and maybe going a little bit more in depth, this time maybe handling it from the perspective of somebody who is familiar with the organization, but maybe not familiar with specifically what you do. Somebody in our finance department, maybe somebody over in our healthcare division as well. Could you maybe go a little bit more in depth about what your role actually is to somebody who is more familiar with what Signature does?
Yeah, for sure. So I think a lot of people here are familiar with one of our big vendors, Five9. So I have a lot of the administrator roles within Five9 to be able to set up and change things. So if somebody calls in and let's say they get voice prompts, either text to speech or something pre-recorded, I can help change those. I can help calls flow within a different manner. And that's, a large piece of kind of what I do and help out with and stuff. Another piece is also, like I mentioned earlier, helping the associates do their jobs better. So being able to provide solutions to them so that they can access information in their desk procedures easier, or just be able to navigate through the different systems that they have to use each and every day, whether that's, the VA's Citrix or Azure, or even our own systems internally we've built here. I play a role in making those the best and most efficient as possible. Customer service is never fun to call into, no matter what you're calling for, at least in my own personal experience. So if I can make that a little easier for anyone, then I think I've hit the right note.
I really love that sentiment. And, you've been here coming up on 7 years shortly, I think maybe in April. Could you maybe explain to those listening your journey within Signature, how you started here and how that led you to your current role as operations support manager?
Yeah, so I started off as a claims processor, I had no background in the healthcare revenue cycle, and now I actually teach a course on SigU about the healthcare revenue cycle. So if you haven't signed up for that and you're interested, feel free to do so. But yeah, I had no background in it. Like I mentioned before, I have a biology degree. So I was able to use some of the physiology and anatomy to understand some of the diagnosis and procedures and that type of stuff on claims themselves. And also my background with computers and specifically like hotkeys and stuff. I played too many video games growing up, so I was able to use my mastery of the keyboard to process claims very efficiently and accurately. And at times it really did kind of feel like a game, repetitive, kind of in a good way. But I was in the zone at those times, just like playing a good game. So I was able to kind of use that to move up into a lead position around the first year I was here. So as a lead, there was no like senior lead or anything at that time, but I ran a lot of the lead meetings and stuff, and it kind of felt like a de facto one sort of, and was able to kind of use that leadership to also then to put myself in a good position to move over to the contact center when we opened up in 2019, and to put myself in a place where I had an important role in setting up the contact center and managing the associates being able to answer certain questions and processes and how to do certain things within the systems that I was already very familiar with. We're talking about hundreds of new people who've never used these systems before, but I knew them like the back of my hand. So I was able to kind of use those skills to help get us up and going. And then, like I mentioned not too long ago, it was December of 2019 where I was approached with the idea of the research. And at that time, I also was able to move into operations management. It was kind of tied together so that I could manage the team that was doing that type of research and stuff. I really just kept putting myself in positions and, trying to not necessarily create something for myself, but more just like I've always done, put my best self out there and see what opportunities arise. And I don't want to say that I'm an opportunist because I feel like an opportunist is a lot of times going to end up in a job that they might not be best suited for because an opportunity arises and stuff. And I'm in a job that I feel like I'm very well suited for and meets my strengths and stuff. So it's just a lot of that all kind of, combined together. Then once I was an operations manager, I began working more and more with Jessica Krambeck on a lot of systems and reporting and that type of stuff, and was able to find some solutions along the way for a lot of different things that we were looking at, with both my technical skills as well as Excel skills, that type of stuff. And then eventually I approached my manager at that time, Kevin Slater. I was like, hey, I think I'm pretty good at this type of stuff and I'm interested in working in it more. And he's like, I agree. And he was a fantastic supervisor to have. So he enabled me to continue growing those skills and push to get me into some sort of role, which is the role that I'm in right now. And it wasn't something that happened overnight. It was just a conversation that we'd had months and months prior, and we kind of worked on and worked towards. And it was something, there was no guarantees or anything, and I think that's kind of what's difficult with some people about it, is because they want to feel like something's guaranteed. Where I just said, hey, I'm good at this. I can show you that I'm good at this. I think that I'm good at this. I would like to do more of this to be able to help people and stuff. And like I said, it didn't happen overnight, but it is something that grew into the position that I'm in now. So yeah, that's kind of a not so brief summary of my coming up on 7 years. It'll be 7 years sometime this spring. But yeah, not a quick journey. Went to a couple of different places, but I feel like I've grown as a person and improved every department I've worked in so far. So.
Wow, that is quite the journey you've had here. So you've reached this stage in your career. Could you give us a little more about, now that you're here, what does your day-to-day look like?
Day to day is interesting. It's now that I'm in the position that I'm in where I support the entire PC, not just C4, which was, well, even when I was in C4, I kind of evolved into this, and I was doing a lot of this role near the end of my tenure as an operations manager. But there's a lot more meetings and groups and collaborations and stakeholders and different things that I'm a part of. So within those meetings and stuff, anytime something pops up where people have questions about data, like a lot of times people will come up and say like, hey, so and so these CSRs are telling me this, or these leads are saying this. I can be like, hey, I'll run this report and give me 2 minutes and I'll have the data that you're looking for, and we can see if this is a real thing that we need to address right now, or maybe it's not. As the operations support manager, when I first kind of introduced myself to everybody in the role, people were already coming to me, kind of as a go-to person for a lot of questions about running reporting in 5.9 and also different types of Excel fun stuff, let's just say. So I just let people know that, hey, I'm gonna continue being that kind of, go-to person. So if you need a report created, or you just have a general question and you want some data on it, you can still come to me. So I still get that day to day, but I am more focused now on like I mentioned, implementing and designing and creating new things that are, let's say, half of what the VA is likely going to request in, the next generation contract, and half of something that is going to make our CSR's lives a lot easier. And within that and all that, I also have other smaller little projects and ideas and stuff. And also probably one of the coolest things I love about my new role is that I do get to learn new things and actually, spend time doing trainings and courses and stuff and just absorbing information that I will be able to apply to some of these new projects and stuff that I'm working on.
It sounds like you landed exactly where you have to be in your current role. You've actually led me into something I was really interested to talk to you about. Just for the listeners at home, we do a little bit of a pre-interview with our guests before we talk to them, just to help guide the conversation. Something, Cody, that you mentioned that I thought really was intriguing was about how you give 110% to everything you do, and how, regardless of outcome, you use everything as a learning opportunity. You mentioned that you actually tied it into some Stoic philosophy stuff that you've found very helpful throughout your life. Could you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. So back when I was in college, I defined success as that original idea I kind of presented where, you have a goal. If you meet it, you're successful. If you don't, you're not. But going through college courses and stuff, I love taking philosophy courses. And one of the things I really picked up on probably about the middle of my career in college was Stoic philosophy, and specifically Marcus Aurelius. There's a book called Meditations, which I still read every couple of years. And I'm not really big into self-help books or those types of things, as bad as that might sound, but Meditations I will read fairly often. Just because, it was written almost 2,000 years ago, but everything that he talks about still holds up to this day because it's all about the Stoic philosophy and mindset and, being able to control the things that you can control to the best of your ability and being able to weather any type of, misfortune and that type of stuff. So I picked that up fairly early in college, but I really didn't apply it until after college and after I'd had some bumps in the road. So I originally was interested in getting a master's in like forest ecology or something working with small mammals. And so I was applying to a lot of, grad schools. I tested very well on the GRE and the biology GRE. And I felt like I was doing everything I possibly could to get into the programs that I wanted to and wasn't able to. And that feeling of yeah, it was tough. It was one of the biggest, challenges that I'd had up to that point in my life. And but I what I had to do was kind of reflect back on my Stoic philosophy. And when I looked back at everything that I had done and that type of stuff, when I looked back at the body of work that I put in, it was impressive to myself even. So after that, I was like, I shouldn't feel bad about this at all. I did my absolute best. It didn't work out. And maybe that's for the better. You don't know what it's going to lead you to next. So it was really that moment that kind of, forced me to really start living that Stoic philosophy that I had learned so much about previously. So I took it from there and just made sure that I was doing the best at whatever it was I was doing, whether I was selling furniture in Nebraska Furniture Mart or eventually cleaning windows just because I love working outside. I was one of the best in my role at every position that I took up, and am fortunate enough to have been referred here by someone awesome to take a job at Signature. And I've taken that mindset that I ingrained a decade prior, and I'm still using it here to this day.
Well, thank you for that. For people not in the know, I actually was the person that referred Cody to Signature, a decision I do not regret at all. And here we are today talking on this podcast. Actually, I thought a lot of the stuff you were saying there was probably some of the most valuable lessons I think we can get across to people listening to this podcast. If you lead with excellence and you just always try to be a go-to person, opportunities seem to present themselves to people, opportunities to shine and grow in our roles and take on new responsibilities. Speaking of opportunities and challenges, could you speak a little bit more to a recent project you worked on that you were tasked on to help solve in your role?
Specifically on the Champ VA side, there had been a increase in the handle time that dated back to about June, and this was brought to my attention by my manager, Jessica Crambeck. She was kind of on the ball with what was probably driving this, and so it was kind of my task to analyze what we had to work with and find out how much this was driving it. which I was able to do. And I was able to kind of pull out this subset of calls from all the other ones and try to get a good idea of how much this is impacting us, which it was impacting us to a significant enough amount that it was worth addressing, obviously. And on top of that, I looked into some of anything else that kind of stood out amongst the Champ V8 program, which I didn't have any experience in at that time. Everything prior to that, I had focused on C4 because that's where I started off as a lead, and I was an operations manager for 4 years. So it was a lot of new stuff to me, but another thing that really kind of stood out to me was the amount of time that associates were waiting to speak to a lead or a supervisor. I kind of identified that as, hey, this is the area where we have the most control over, and we can actually do something to affect this a lot more readily than the idea that Jessica brought to me, which was like a specific subset of callers. So it was kind of we were tackling two different things. One of them we had very little control over, but obviously we worked with the VA and we're still ongoing. Not only do we want to help, reduce these amount of calls and the lengths of them, the VA does as well. So being able to transfer information in a way that makes sense with our direct partner is something that we're still driving to do. And then in terms of waiting to speak to a supervisor, the queue wait time, we call it, that has been reduced significantly. I've worked with the two senior managers in the Champ VA department to help implement some solutions. And they've done a lot of the work. I just did analyses and the suggestions and stuff like that. But that's what I love doing. I love, picking apart the reports, seeing how much of an impact this is actually making. And then also framing it in a way that, how does a CSR or a caller experience this if they're waiting, on average 3 or 4 minutes just on hold before they even speak to somebody, hundreds and hundreds of calls like that per day. It's just not a good experience for, our associates, the callers themselves, and also it's hurting something that we can improve to help improve our business. So yeah, that was a big one that we tackled. It was a two-headed beast, and I was kind of able to guide both of those processes to improve a bit.
I mean, really, that goes back to the heart of what your role is. I mean, the support you offered, as you said, saved minutes per call times 500 or 600 associates on the phone every day with people. I mean, really, that adds up. And again, who are they talking to? Providers, payers. People are just trying to sort out healthcare and make it easier. So, I mean, you talk about improving the lives of the people we work with, and yeah, you live it.
Yeah, and even if you're talking saving 20 seconds, there are certain other initiatives that I'm pushing for right now that maybe they can save 15 to 20 seconds per call. That becomes very significant.
And doing some quick math there, 20 seconds times 15,000 calls, you're saving about 3.5 days worth of phone time that our associates can spend solving other problems in healthcare.
It's a big number.
What I'm picking up on is that you have a behavior of constant learning. I think constant learning is definitely something that's important for career building here at Signature. You'd mentioned, you'd always had an interest, even when you were considering getting a master's in forest ecology. That didn't really change the fact that you were doing other stuff, such as working with HTML back in high school, building PCs in college. And now, as I think you had mentioned, you're working on, for example, you'd mentioned about working with XML. Can you explain a little bit more on what XML is to maybe the audience that's not familiar?
Yeah, it's extensible markup language. It's it's very similar to HTML and was developed after the fact to be a lot more variable. And now it's actually used a lot more for data transmission than it is specifically for coding websites and stuff. But my journey before college, even back in high school, I played video games with people online all around the country who I'd never actually met in person before. And I created a website that could kind of, tie us all together and then link a forum to and stuff like that. And basically just coded that from nothing. And that was kind of the start of it. And then even once I got into my sophomore year of high school, I started learning C++, did some more of that in college, took about 3 semesters of computer science in college. That type of work and learning a programming language and stuff, it never really left me, because that was all problem solving and finding really novel ways to accomplish certain things as efficiently as possible. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of stuff can be brute forced, but if you can automate something in a very efficient way, it was fun, and I like those challenges and stuff. So come, fast forward to being here at Signature, I noticed that some of the systems that we use, obviously there's room for those types of processes, and just having a background in how, computer programming works has helped me immensely, and being able to, troubleshoot things that come up, as well as understand, our current systems, and then also like working with XML now, implement something that will be something we'll use in the future.
That is very cool. And if you couldn't tell, a little strength shout out, Cody has learner and input in his top 5. So I feel over the course of our conversation, we're really putting together the ingredients for building a very successful career pathing journey here. Could you maybe talk a little bit more about when all of these things, your work ethic, your skills, passions came together? Is there a turning point that helped shape your path today?
I mean, probably the biggest thing, and one of the things that sort of, helped define my career here at Signature, was back when I was a lead in the PEC that had just opened up. I was approached with an idea about being able to offer spreadsheets to providers so that they could fill those out and send them back. And then we could, more efficiently answer their requests about claim status and that type of stuff without having to go over them manually one by one over the phone, like I said, much more efficiently. And then obviously that'll help drive down some of the call volume just a little bit to ultimately meet our biggest goal of reducing the wait time that was an issue at that time in the call center. So that idea being brought to me back in December of 2019 it was novel. I loved it. I love the fact that, somebody came up with that idea, and also that it had some layer of approval of something that we could do. And they really just kind of let me run with it at that point. So I got to design all of the scripting and the emails that were sent out to providers, the scripting that we used on the phone calls, the actual template of the spreadsheet itself, and also setting up, everything from who's doing this, who's going to be doing the research, who's going to be helping out with the administration of it, who's going to be supporting me and, in working with providers in a different way that we never had before at Signature Performance. So we never had that, email communication back and forth, at least in the call center. I'm sure we emailed plenty of other departments, but yeah, so just being able to have that idea presented, it immediately clicked with me. I thought it sounded awesome, and I was able to run with it at that point. And it was a program that lasted for almost 4 years, and it was highly successful. But there came a time that it wasn't serving its intended purpose quite anymore. But up until then, I was very proud of just the idea, and also being able to be a big part of implementing it and running with it. So.
At the speed of business, 4 years is actually a really long time for a solution to be in place. So I think you should be proud of that.
Yeah.
Something that intrigued me by your response to that, especially with a podcast like this, how did you know how to do that when you talked about making the forms, deciding how everything worked, how you were given that responsibility? Can you go a little further into how your job experience here, how your previous role had given you the ability to run a project like that?
Yeah, no, it's I think it all goes back to my curiosity and my learner strength, especially, back in college when doing research as an undergrad on North American pica, which if you don't know what a pica is, check them out. They're adorable. Did some research on those, but it had to use Excel a lot in the course of doing that type of research. And that's where I picked up a lot of my Excel skills. I, furthered them here, and back working in claims processing. I think it was a lot of like TriWest spreadsheets. So a shout out to Joe and Nick, who are probably sick of those spreadsheets. But I learned a lot about how to use those and run with those. And also Excel is super powerful if you understand logic and even some basic kind of programming and stuff. All of that background that I had because I was curious about computers and languages and stuff prior fed into what I was able to kind of, do and understand with the Excels and the spreadsheets and stuff themselves. And then in terms of the email sent out to providers and the scripting and stuff, I feel pretty confident that I'm one of those nerds that sometimes reads the fine print, and just kind of once you get a handle of how people speak in very formal and specific terms, because you have to be very specific in those types of things, and a strong attention to detail, I kind of took that, and I feel like I can kind of speak in that language. And it's not my favorite language to speak in, but it does obviously serve a really important purpose. And I was able to use that skill to, communicate to and from providers and such too. So
I love that learned language response. I think that that's awesome. That it's like I couldn't really speak it, but I read the fine print, and I don't want to say legalese, but the formality of it. That's very cool that you sort of took that on and were able to repeat it back to sort of communicate better with our client.
Close to, yeah.
You're really making a difference on the job day to day currently. What impact do you aspire to make within the organization and with the people you directly work with moving forward?
I want to be able to tie emerging technologies with improving the jobs and just job satisfaction of the CSRs essentially. Those were the people that I really kind of connected with. When I first started off here, I didn't really see myself ever working in a call center. When the opportunity came up, I was like, hey, I worked in customer service and sales quite a bit. Let's give it a shot. And that's also where the work is trending essentially. But once I became an operations manager and had kind of my own team under me and made personal connections with 30 plus people, that's when it really hit me and it clicked that, I care about these people a lot and I want to make their jobs easier. I want to make them happy and successful. And I think that without even realizing it, that's kind of where I started driving my focus and attention. And so I took it from there, and that over the course of 4 years or so, that's kind of where I morphed into what I'm doing now.
In your specific role in our customer service department or the operations sides of the business, how do you see the future of your profession evolving and what steps are you taking to stay ahead of the learning curve?
So specifically in my role, and maybe it's one of the reasons I sort of sought it out and put a lot of time and effort into learning some of these things, is that I'm the one changing the landscape. So I have a say in some of the ideas that are going to be part of the next generation of who we are and what we do here at Signature, and being able to then also take those ideas, try to sell them as best as possible. And then even more importantly is to make them successful after the fact. One thing to have a lot of good ideas and stuff, and that's very important. And there's amazing people that are, they have ideation in their top 5 strengths. But then being able to actually implement and analyze and improve and continue to grow those ideas, I think is really cool. That is kind of along the lines of what I'm doing right now.
It sounds like you've really found yourself in a position that's perfectly suited to you. So, Cody, final question for you today. It's something I like to ask everybody in our media and our communications. We like to leave the audience with the expert, giving them what is one piece of advice or maybe a new perspective you want to leave our audience with if they're interested in pursuing and growing their own career here at Signature.
It's to be able to, you don't need to be good at everything, but if you can be really good at one thing a lot of times, then you're going to be the person that people will go to for that type of stuff, and you'll serve a specific purpose. So just do your absolute best and try to not necessarily carve out a niche. And I kind of feel my strengths really put me into a position that has a lot of value in the emerging technologies, and be that person to break the barrier between talking to the really technical people and the operational people who are very much more in touch with people than persons and emotions and that type of stuff. So I'm just very fortunate, I think, overall. I've put myself in position to be able to take advantage of the opportunities as they arise, and I think that's kind of the key. I never knew that this position that I, am in right now was going to exist. When I was a processor, I had no idea that a call center was going to exist at any sort of time. I didn't really have a specific type of, goal. And maybe that's a bad thing. Like I wasn't saying like, hey, I want to be a senior manager by 2021. I was just saying, hey, I'm going to do the absolute best I can in my job right now, and we'll see what opportunities come up along the way. And I think that's kind of the key, is just being the best version of yourself and helping others and having that ownership mentality. And who nobody knows what the next day is gonna bring, but if you put yourself in a really solid position, then you can take advantage of those opportunities. So that's my best advice.
I think that is great advice to leave our audience with this week. Cody, I just really want to say thank you for sitting down with us today and being our very first guest for On the Job With. I think your insights, your experience, and your advice to those listening is invaluable, and we hope that it can go a long way to helping people grow their own careers here at Signature.
Yeah, for sure. Nope. It was exciting to be here, and I actually look forward to listening to some of your other guests you have on here. I think everybody's journey, especially when you get to more of a little bit, of a personal level, and how people got to where they are at, that stuff's really interesting to me. So I look forward to the rest of the series.
Yeah, absolutely. Me as well. And I cannot wait to share who we get to go on the job with next.